what's up, guys? What's going on? This is Liam from Liam Stops Tinnitus, and we have, I think you must be the very first guest that I've actually interviewed, because I've been interviewed before, but I've never interviewed other people. So, and the reason that is because I found you. I'll get you to introduce yourself in just a second, but I found you on Anthony Chaffee's YouTube channel. Yes. And I watch so many of his videos and they're all fantastic. And, you know, I think I watched like 20 of them in total. And then I found your video. And so I found your video. And the first thing that I liked was that you're from the same place as me in Melbourne.
Yes, great.
Best place in the world, smartest people in the world all come from Melbourne. It's a scientific fact. We all know that, of course. And so I watched your video and it absolutely blew me away. So before we get into too much detail, would you like to introduce yourself, your name, your credentials, and what you're about? Just a bit of an introduction.
Yeah, thank you. So I know it's been exciting connecting and, you're finding me through, the amazing Anthony Chaffee. So my name is Natalie E. West for people that don't know me. I've been a clinical psychotherapist specializing in self-image and nutritional psychology now for over 16 years. Come from a 20-year corporate background. So, the power of the mind has always been a very intriguing thing to me. But basically the key of what I've been doing for the last 16 years is combining, gut-brain axis health between mental and physical health and, what we fuel ourselves with, not just through what we see and we hear, but what we put in our mouth.
Yeah. And I got to say, that's the thing that just stood out to me of what you just said was that you've been doing it for 16 years. That's amazing because I look at people like, we're kind of in a similar sort of space, and that space being people who realize plants are not healthy and they're in fact trying to hurt us, and meat is the healthiest option. And I look at people like, Sean Baker, Bart Kay, Anthony Chaffee even, and you go onto YouTube and you can just find all these people. Yeah. But I would say, it's not a competition, but I would say you are probably the person who's been doing it for the longest. And you have a really good story, and it has to do with your education. And it was that story, and I've heard it again and again because I've watched all of your podcasts, I've watched all the videos you've done because it's so fantastic. Truly.
Thank you.
And this story keeps coming up again and again of your mentor who told you about, and I think he said, I don't want to ruin it, but I think you know the story I'm talking about. So can you talk about that? Yeah.
I will. And it's really, really important. So, back when I started down the psychology route, I ended up going to a seminar where there was a psychotherapist there. And, what's quite unique about psychotherapy, it's a very different way of looking at the mind and teaching people tools and strategies to really open the door for them to heal themselves and understand themselves at a far deeper level. But one thing that he said was when he was speaking, he was actually a specialist in orthomolecular and psychonutrition. So, this man was in his mid-60s, right? So I'm
what
just
is,
like...
Can I just ask, what is orthomolecular nutrition and all
That's what I was like. I'm like,
yeah.
What is that 16 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And for anyone that kind of wants to look into the depths of orthomolecular nutrition, it's been around for, I'm talking many, 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 many years, right? So people like Linus Pauling, Abraham Hoffer, they are the founders really of understanding the connection between the psychiatric gut health to brain, to mind, to what you eat. Mm-hmm. So for me, at that seminar, he said to me at the end when I kind of was like, how do I do what you do? And he said, Natalie, if you really want to help people put the full piece of the puzzle together, never, ever, ever just talk to a starving brain for the next 10 or 20 years. And I'm like, whoa, that's pretty powerful. And also too, he said, you must combine both gut, brain, health, what people are eating, but also give them the tools and the strategies to understand how their minds work. So for me, also, again, not by coincidence, I ended up at another seminar a couple of weeks later where there was another psychologist there actually who was talking about brain health through food. And she said, I left the psychology industry because you literally cannot talk to someone for the rest of their life without asking them what they eat. Mm-hmm. So I knew for me, I was on the right path. So, looking at the psychology model, as you know, Liam, we just kind of separate our heads and we put our heads over there and our bodies go over here. And we're all treated as like a piece of a puzzle. But, you know, as this gentleman said to me, he's just like, you got to do it properly. You have to treat the whole piece of the puzzle. Otherwise, get to the end of the road.
One thing you just said then is really fascinating to me, which is you and I might get this wrong, but you can correct what I say. You can't talk to a starving brain.
Correct.
Which to me kind of says, and I want to know what you think, it's almost pointless to talk to a starving brain. So can you, in my eyes, it kind of seems like, because first of all, I should have laid some groundwork at the beginning, but the conditions that you deal with, are they things like schizophrenia, anxiety? Like what's the really severe stuff you deal with, and what's the kind of not so severe stuff?
So the main things are generally depression, anxiety, disordered eating, real self-loathing, really bad relationships with self, people that have been in therapy for probably a long time. I've had some psychiatrists that have referred me people who have had kind of type 2 bipolar-ish and were kind of trying to be put on lithium. So there is people out there that kind of see the power of, you know, food as a healing modality, from using glucose to ketones. But, you know, again, when we talk about how in-depth our minds work, and, you know, consciously and unconsciously, and our body's also unconscious as well, right? Until we actually activate it and we understand what's going on. You cannot literally, well, you can, because this is what the industry is based on, right? You go and you show up every week and you talk about the same things over and over and over and over, and then you walk out, right? Now, when you walk out, if you're fueling yourself with hyper-processed food, sugars, and no nutritional, you know, depth to anything that'll actually feed the body in relation to amino acids to create neurotransmitters, you're going to stay in there. That's a loop that you'll stay in pretty much most of your life. So if you're going out of a session, spoken about whatever it may be, your depression or anxiety, but we're talking about the outside story loops, right? The consciousness, and it's deep in the unconscious part of where we learn those behaviors, labels, identities. But we're forgetting one of the most crucial parts, and that's our first brain, which is our gut.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I have had, as you know, I fix people with tinnitus.
Yes.
And one of the ways that I do that is through food.
Yes.
And I have people come to me who say, you know, Liam, I had anxiety, I had depression, I had all these, nothing like schizophrenia or anything like that, but serious anxiety. Like I had people who were agoraphobic. They couldn't leave their home. And they would tell me, you know, I did 10 years of therapy, and it was all talk therapy, and they put me on antidepressants like Zoloft, Ativan, really strong stuff. And they would go on it and off it, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And they always thought, as you just said, oh, well, it's this stuff does matter, obviously, as you would know. It's a talking thing, it's like a cyclical thing. But they said, Liam, as soon as I cut out all the coffee, all the refined carbohydrates, all of the sugar, all of the Coca-Cola, all the alcohol, and I started eating more meat, in 2 months, their issues were complete. I'm talking 100% resolved. So can you talk about why that would be? What's happening there?
Yeah. So it's great that you bring that up, because, you know, in society, as it has been for a very long time, we've been led to believe that, you know, depression and anxiety are not reversible. Right. And the same with even schizophrenia and type 2 bipolar. You know, if I kind of mention the work of Dr. Chris Palmer right now, you know, he's been using ketogenic diets with, you know, high protein, high fat to reverse schizophrenia and type 2 bipolar.
That's unbelievable. I remember, just to quickly put this in there, I remember, I think I was riding my motorbike, and I had my headphones in. This is like a week ago.
Yeah.
And I was listening to an interview with you, and you were talking about how this woman had schizophrenia, and she was like basically catatonic, and it was just really like, you know, no hope. And she went on an all meat diet or something to that effect. And within, I don't know what the time frame was, but the point was she cured it. Or if you want to use that word, like she reversed it 100%. And to me, that's like, it's just like there is a ceiling to what food can fix. But that just raised it so high. I mean, schizophrenia is, I thought, it's genetic or it's unfixable.
Correct. And that's, again, the psychology-led model and the medical model, right? So what we've really got to understand is, from the space that I come from, people have been dealing with this for a very long time, and most people think they're broken and they think that there's something wrong with them, right? And really, I want people to understand that's not true, and it's never been true. But unfortunately, what happens is, if you're operating from a very, very poor and conflicted self-image, and you've been told that you've got depression and, here's some medication, but you can go away and eat junk food and that doesn't affect you, you're being led down the wrong path. And it's very, very, very disempowering. But one of the biggest things that I work with people is understanding, most people, Liam, don't understand who they are without it. So it's the same thing. I'll just think about a client right now. I've been working with her for about 5.5 weeks now, and very disordered eating, would weigh herself up to 4 times a day, count macros, count calories, total obsession with food. We went straight into carnivore, psychotherapy work, given her tools and strategies every single day to manage where her mind is, what it's doing. So she understands, and she's in control of understanding unconscious and conscious behaviors for her, what she has learned through beliefs and values, which mostly are not our own. 5.5 weeks in, full carnivore-based diet, it's all gone.
Unbelievable. And how long has she been having those problems for?
10 years.
That's ridiculous.
Five weeks. Yeah.
You know what? It's funny because I'm shocked. I always get shocked at these stories, but at the same time, I'm not surprised. You know what I mean? I'm not surprised. So let's get back to the food in a second, but I'm actually interested in the psychotherapy work that you do as well. So, we know, okay, we'll get back to food in a second. When you say, she comes without, telling too much about her story, but just in general, you have someone who comes into your office and, they have a serious problem like that, which is serious. What exactly is psychotherapy? And you mentioned before, I think, beliefs that were not her own. Can you talk a bit about that and what it is and how you fix it?
Yeah. So basically, also coming from a background, in clinical hypnosis and hypnotherapy, that's a really core root reason. And then, lots of different kind of psychotherapy modalities on top of that. But as I said, I've been doing this for 16 years. So I've really, really in tune with, when I hear people say something or, their body's reacting a certain way, I kind of know in relation to where they are, because every single person is unique, right? Got to understand that from the beginning. So if I take everyone back to understand, as a child, your head is like a video camera, right? So it's literally absorbing, recording, and it's still recording now. It records in videos, colors, sounds, and it's just being laid down. Yeah. So as a child, up until the age of 7, your beliefs, values, and all your self-image is all developed by people external to you. So that's why most humans in the world, welcome to the world's biggest club, of where we get validated externally.
Yeah.
Right. So we seek, hunt external validation because that's what we have learned. It's a learned behavior. Yeah. So your mind is literally, effectively like a hard drive, right? It gets the program, it gets emotion, the emotion gets laid down, and that becomes a part of your values, belief structures, then leading into your personality, right? So up until the age of 12, you can't think. You cannot filter out anything. So every single thing, whether or not it serves you or not, gets laid down as a part of your patterning and your programming, as a part of your self-image.
Really?
Yeah, everything.
I heard something, and I think I already know the answer, but I wanted to hear it from you because you would know. I heard that self-esteem is built in the first 8 years of your life.
Yeah, 0 to 7, pretty much. Yeah,
0 to 7. Okay, sure. So, your self-confidence, what you're worth. So when people are developing these beliefs, what can you give me an example of, for example, like some beliefs that would benefit a person and some beliefs that would, be detrimental to their happiness and their success in life?
So one of the biggest ones that's detrimental to most human beings is we're programmed to care about what other people think.
Yeah. Okay.
And other people's thoughts, feelings, reactions, and opinions.
Yeah.
And not our own, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's building up a trust factor. But again, if we look at parentals, authority figures, that's exactly the relationships that we mirror in everything in our life, until we actually become conscious and actually allow the gap in the space to create new patterns and programs. One of the biggest things, and this is why I'm so passionate about nutritional psychology and the connection, that's where we learn what food is. So example is kids, right? We've all been told, shove those vegetables down your throat because otherwise you won't get your ice cream.
Or you can't leave the table until you finish them. That's
correct, right? And it's the same thing with if you fall over or you cry. It's like, stop crying. Here's a lollipop, or you're not going to get your treat. So this is where we learn very, very unhealthy patterns, right? So they're unhealthy. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and it's very rare that I've come across someone that's operating from mostly their positive self-image. Now, our positive self-image is a part of us that will come up whenever we go to want to be excited or do something new, or we meet someone. But a lot of the time, we only stay in that for a very short amount of time before the negative one overrides. So then that energy just takes us out.
Is it because I'm very curious about this. When you say a short amount of time, are we talking like an hour or a month, or does it depend on?
Depends on the person. Depends on the person of their thinking process and how they actually think about themselves. So they may, for example, right, you might want to start a new business, or you might want to go and study something, and all of a sudden you're like, yes, I can do it. I can do it.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
But then the other side comes up and goes, no, don't do that, because the last time you did that, what happened?
I see what you're saying. It's like when, the closest example I can have is when you talk to men and you're like, oh, go and talk to that girl, or I want to talk to that girl or something.
Yeah.
Guys had like bad experiences or been told like women don't like that, then he's probably not going to do it because he's too frightened about, the bad stuff and what's going to happen and all that.
Well, the most powerful thing about our mind is it will always operate in the known, whether or not it serves you or not, until you change it in the unknown. So, for example, especially with men, and I'll use that example, whenever you're growing up and you approach women and you have a really bad rejection experience, that's a very high amount of emotional content, right?
Yeah. We've all had that.
Your mind goes, whoa, that's really important. Let's not do that again.
Right. So, okay. Yeah.
What happens is your mind's only ever in the past, because that's where the known is, right? So whenever you look to your future, most people, especially when they're dealing with mental health or physical health issues, the future looks bleak for them because it'll only ever represent the past, right? Because most people are very fearful of the unknown, but that's where you create from. So fear, rejection, fear of failure, they're all past memory experiences, which most people operate on in a waking state of hypnosis. We're hypnotizing ourselves every single day.
Wow. Okay. Now let's tie this into the food, and I'll try to keep up a little bit with this stuff. So we've just spoken about, obviously, just briefly, as you said, like you've been doing this for 16 years, and I'm trying to summarize it very briefly, but I'll do my best. Okay. So we've spoken about the negative beliefs, and we've spoken about, the positive beliefs. So let's say you get, as you've just said, you've gotten someone to come into the office and they have a problem. Why you, as a psychotherapist, compared to another psychotherapist, you who's saying, hey, let's get rid of these plants, let's get rid of, and we're just talking about food now. That, let's say food, okay, you know what? Let's say this. Let's say we clone you. Let's clone you right now. We're cloning Natalie, right? Okay. We got one in one office, one in the other office, and we also clone the patient. We're cloning everyone. Okay. We got two of the same patients, right? Maybe you got me and my brother. I'm a twin. We got us. Okay. We have exactly the same problem. We present with an eating disorder, let's just say, right? Maybe I think that's common for your patients, right? Yeah, sure. Gotcha. So one Natalie just focuses on the psychotherapy side of things.
Story,
Yep, that's that stuff. And the other Natalie is you, and you're also doing the food. Why is it that you, when you're including the food element, why do you get the results that you do, and why is it that the other Natalie who doesn't include the food gets the results for a patient that she does?
Well, again, if I go back to the client, for example, most of the time, the two things that I ask them is, has anyone ever showed you how your mind works? And please tell me what you eat. Every single person will say, I've never been asked that question. Why? And then once I start telling them, they're like, whoa, that makes sense. My diet's really bad. I have a sad, standard Australian diet, which we call a SAD diet, which makes you sad, right? But the other side of it is depending on the level of someone's threshold of where they have been most of their life. So, for example, with me, I get all of my referrals from people from, past clients, podcast people hearing what I'm talking about because they've been in the other Natalie's office, for a long time, right?
Yes.
And I will say, if someone's metabolically healthy and they've got to go and they're having a relationship issue or a relationship breakdown, going and chatting to the other Natalie might be great about that, but it's really about the psychotherapist or the psychologist really picking up any other kind of anomalies that most people won't try to tell you. Right. But if we're talking about, well, I've had anxiety for 20 years, but my relationship's breaking down, what most people tend to do, they'll focus on the spot fire of the relationship and not the other things that is going on around them. So again, I'll treat root cause. I won't treat the symptoms.
Yeah. That's, I think that's the best thing for it. And I got to tell you, even though I'm not a doctor, I'm not medically trained, I do exactly the same thing. And it's sort of like the other, for me, the other Natalie or other Liam is an ENT. And so when someone has ringing in their ears, all the ENTs say is, first of all, they say it's idiopathic, which means it comes from nowhere, which is preposterous. It's the worst, stupidest word I've ever heard in my life. Insane.
Well, I was told that over 20 years ago when I had idiopathic urticaria.
What exactly is that? Sorry.
So full idiopathic urticaria, which is literally a full body hives, just head to toe.
Okay. Like a dermatological, like.
Oh no, red, like on fire, hives, bad, like to the point where no one knew what it was. But now looking back,
you know what it
I'm
was
like, I know what it was. It was bloody plants.
Yeah. And so, okay. So now let's go into the food a little bit more. And so I have my own opinions about this, and I feel it's a little bit of a loaded question here, so kind of bear with me. So when it comes to, let's stick with like your patients now.
Yep.
When it comes to your patients, let's say, okay, this person definitely needs to have their diet changed, as does practically everyone.
Yes.
Would you say that when they get better, excluding the factor of the psychotherapy just for a second, would you say that they got better because they removed the toxic plants or they ate the healthy meat? Do you think that it's that the meat is so healthy that they're getting better and nutritious, or the plants is removing the toxic plants or both? Or what do you think? It's
removing the toxins, which then allow the absorption. So for example, if we talk about, say, that, person, which we're kind of referencing now.
Yeah.
Most people are heavy dominated on plants and carbs in a small amount of meat, right? So again, if we're eating eating plants that are blocking any absorption from the meat or anything, especially say heme iron, for example, and someone's loading up on kale and spinach, that meat has no chance, right? But again, let's not blame the meat for all the other rubbish and sugar producing foods that is in the gut. So for me, I've got clients that, literally have to come off everything immediately and within 2 to 3 weeks. And also too, they go into a bit of a cognitive dissonance because it's like, am I going to die without my plants? I'm like, well, I'm doing okay. And it's been 3 years, so we're all good.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
But it's association with restriction and the diet mentality. So the other thing, even when I use the word carnivore, I don't even really use the word carnivore diet because, again, understanding how the mind works and the attachment to association with diet, it triggers people's past memory responses. And then they'll go into the thinking, feeling, reaction of all the diets that they've been on in the last 20 years. And then they'll be like, it blocks any success, right?
They just think every time they've tried every other diet, it always fails or makes
correct. But also too, a diet has an end date.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And it's how I kind of see it is it's absolutely not a diet because it's just the way humans should be eating.
Species appropriate way of eating. That's what I call it.
100%. What do you think about, and because you and I are both from Melbourne, we come from the same place. And I see all these funny pictures of people saying like, the perfect Australia, and Melbourne is missing, and they cut Melbourne, like Victoria is missing. And it's very funny because, for those people who aren't from Australia or, are Australian in a different place, Melbourne is really like the hipster coffee, like just wanker, like the veganism is just crazy. Like you can't walk down like, Flinders Street in Melbourne CBD.
Yeah, or St Kilda.
Yeah, St Kilda, yeah, and like all these vegan places, and it's all happy and healthy and all this sort of stuff. What do you think about, and seriously now, what do you think about the state of, the universities and TAFEs and whatever who are teaching nutrition to people, and what they're teaching now is like basically almost full-blown veganism.
Correct.
Do you think that, it's going to get better, or do you think it's going to get worse? Or what do you think in terms of the curriculum? Or what do you think about that?
I think it's going to stay the same and potentially get worse. But it's funny you bring that up, because a young guy who's going through his master's in psychology rang me a couple of weeks ago because he really wanted to kind of talk about this food thing, right? And he was just like, I don't think there's any point of me going any further. He goes, because, we're so indoctrinated with the fact that it doesn't matter. And he goes, well, clearly it does matter. So it's the same with, how dietitians, now I'm not labeling every dietitian with, that they're supporting veganism and having Wheat Bix for breakfast, but a lot of them do, right?
Yeah.
But what I do find, the ones that actually come out on the other side with their qualifications and then they start to do their own research. And, again, I was the same, Liam, like, even back with my, orthomolecular training, the main thing 16 years ago, I was still asking people to remove gluten and wheat then, which was quite an unusual thing, right?
Yeah.
So for them back then, it was just like, geez, this lady's an alien. Like, what planet did she come from? But that was the core of that inflammation response, right? And humans don't need it. I know it tastes great, but it's really, really, really bad for you. So back then, if we look at it, it was kind of like a low carb way of eating, bit higher protein, but not so much fat, right? So for me, even going through my own process, I had to really deep dive into my own lessons and learnings to go, well, okay, hold on. Well, I have insulin resistance. How did I get there? By eating a balanced, moderate diet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I had to pull all that apart and go, okay, great. Plants are gone. Carbs are gone. And as I said, that was 3 years ago, and I've been living my best brain life ever since. And not just me, my own personal experience, but as I said, like clients within 2 to 3 weeks, this anxiety. And even a client rang me who didn't want to be here 12 months ago. He didn't want to be here. This is how bad it was. Went to the shed, had it all organized. That's how bad it was.
Wow. Yeah.
Went full carnivore and literally sent me a text message one Saturday, and he said, this is the first day I've woken up with no anxiety, and I actually can't wait to see where my life goes.
See, that is fucking incredible. I mean, isn't that the most crazy? Let me ask you this. So you've obviously been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
It seems to me, would it be accurate to say that, the more you learn, you're getting better and better and better at helping people?
Absolutely.
So I got 2 questions for you. Have you ever tried telling any of your colleagues, other psychotherapists, about that? And if you have, how they reacted? And also, are you worried that you might lose your license? Because in my view, all of this stuff, telling oncologists, neurologists, hematologists, psychologists, general practitioners, telling them that food doesn't matter is intentional, and it's to keep people sick. And it's pretty obvious to me. So first question, have you ever told any of your colleagues, and what do they say about that?
Look, some are open. Like I have a lot of doctors who are functional practitioners, and they're definitely kind of really opening their eyes to the power of what a carnivore way of eating is, and even into low carb, right? Especially for type 2 diabetes. Like, let's just get rid of the carbs so we're not pumping ourselves full of insulin. But that's actually a message. I don't know if you know that, but most type 2 diabetics are told, yeah, it's okay, eat the carbs, but if you eat more carbs, just give yourself more insulin.
Isn't it insane? It's insane.
I'm just like, okay, great. What about your pancreas long term? Like, what's going to happen there with your
cancer
or with your beta cells? Like, what's going to happen with them? They're going to die.
Yeah.
So,
fuck.
It's really mind-blowing, but also too quite sad, where people are not given the right empowerment. And yeah, some psychologists know.
Yeah.
I've been at events where they're like, what? No, that just has got to be antidotal. I'm like, okay, well, maybe just go talk to all my clients that are antidotal without the data.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that about, oh, it's just an anecdotal, it's just a one-off thing, because I don't have patients, obviously, I just have clients, and I'm not a doctor. But
I tend to call them clients as well, because patient averts sickness.
That's, you know what, I'm going to say that's why I say it, because all my psychological training that I don't have. But it's very funny that you say that about anecdotes, because there's something that to be said about the intellectual laziness and arrogance of some doctors, because I've had many, just on the topic of tinnitus.
Yeah, it's amazing.
When someone has tinnitus, they have, they're ringing in their ears, and they go to their doctor and they get referred to their otolaryngologist, which is their ENT, and what they get is an audiogram. And I'm saying this to the viewers as well as you.
Yeah, great.
And they, they get a hearing test, and it's a very flawed hearing test. I won't get into it. It's ridiculous. But usually people are shown to have like some sort of hearing loss, but it's not hearing loss. It's just interference from the tinnitus. They can't hear the hearing test.
Correct.
Anyway, so they go and do that, and the ENT says there's nothing you can do. It's for life. It's idiopathic. Food doesn't make a difference. All the stuff we've been talking about, which is completely like, it's almost like hocus pocus nonsense.
Correct.
And then they find me, or they would find you. And so when people find me, they follow my advice. And, some people have had tinnitus for 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years, and they find me, and 6 months later they reverse it. And then they go back to their ENT and say, look, I reversed it. It's amazing. We should tell everyone. And they go, oh, it probably just happened on its own. Like, you've had it for 25 years, but the fact that when you found this guy, it started going down, 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 down until it's gone, it's just a coincidence. If these people had any like integrity, and, if they had any, if they had any shame, they would go, oh my God, come in, let's take notes so I can tell all my other clients about this. But they don't, because either they're mentally blocking it, which you would probably know more about, or they're just like, la, 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 can't hear it, la, 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 because of the money of earpieces. The money they make is unbelievable.
Could imagine. Like, again, most doctors, as I don't know if a lot of people know, but, most GPs have less than 6 hours of training on nutrition. But again, it's indoctrinated nutrition. It's not really about, supporting really high quality meat, which has had amino acids, which is not by accident. Let's really talk about red meat.
Yeah.
It has 9 of the most powerful amino acids in it that helps us convert the neurotransmitters that we need, right? And again, serotonin, 97% of it is made in your gut. So there's no accident there as to why when we pull out all the plants, i.e. covered in glyphosate, we're eating weed killer, right? So there's got to be some connection with the inflammation of the gut and ears. It's all inflammation.
Yeah.
So, I have great, psychiatrists that I've connected with around the world, one in UK, she supports, a carnivore way of eating for serious mental health. And, she's kind of on her own, because she's like a floating ship in the night. And, Chris Palmer and Dr. Georgia Eid all moved from that psychiatric kind of system to go, okay, there's all these people that are not responding. It's got to be something. And it was found through food and fat and animal product and being in a ketosis state. In relation to my license, because I work globally, I have a global license. So
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yes,
okay,
because I've got qualifications in the US as well. So I'm also completing a nutritional psychiatry addition to what I've done. Only purely because, I fell in love with Chris Palmer's work, and I just wanted to keep all myself up to date with what's going on around the world.
And marry him, and great.
Yeah. I think I'm a little old for him, man.
Well, you never know.
I'm 50, mate.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I think just collectively, even with, Dr. Chafee and all these collective doctors that are really understanding the root cause. And, some of them, they do get challenged with their licenses. But you know what? I think for people, it's just a matter of going, well, why would that be?
Yeah.
Ask the question.
Who was the gentleman who was it Paul Mason who lost his license, and I think he's a South African guy.
Oh no, that was Dr. Noakes.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
What's his whatever his first name was? Yeah, Dr. Noakes. Yeah,
I've just totally lost his first name, but he was a doctor who componed, high carb, blah, 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 until he got, I believe, his own diagnosis, and then totally reversed everything that his illness, and then realized, hold on, I've been talking about the wrong things forever. Yeah. So he also was taken to court. Like all his peers basically had him up on a charge that he was negligent.
His own peers, stabbed in the back by his own peers.
And also too, Dr. Gary Fettke out of Tasmania. And now I don't know if you know him or his wife, but they are trailblazers. And he actually had the same experience as Dr. Noakes, where same thing, doctor, orthopedic surgeon, was vocalizing about how bad processed foods and carbohydrates were and how powerful meat and fat was. Same thing, got deregistered until he was investigated.
It's crazy to think that, he could probably show, look at these amazing results.
Yes.
Because I know that Bart Kay has, I think he always holds this up, and it's because, he's very educated. He's like a statistician, and he's like a very smart man, and he swears long, which is quite funny and good. But the point being, when people come at him about saturated fat, I think he has like 10 of the best studies, or it's like 10 studies, or it's 10 meta-analyses, which would be huge. I'm not sure. But based on all of those things, the conclusion is that saturated fat is not a nutrient of concern in regards to atherosclerosis, heart disease, stroke, all these things.
It's carbohydrates and sugar.
Yeah, it's chronic systemic inflammation. And people are so dumb that they look, there's cholesterol in there, it must be cholesterol, but it's like, no, that's, that obviously, as we know, it's plugging up the holes, and it builds up and builds up because you keep having fucking kale smoothies.
Correct.
Really sick. And then you're lucky at eating animal products, so you'd be dead a lot sooner.
Yes.
So it's,
Well, the American Association of Cardiology just came out around 6 months ago with a study, basically literally saying that saturated fat, there is no risk. It's
really,
I'll send it to you. There's causation versus correlation, right? It's all been founded in very, very, very weak science, and now we've got Ansel Keys to blame for that. So he did the damage, and scientists were paid off to say that saturated fat was bad and sugar was good. So this is why we're in the state we're in. And again, sugar is not your friend. It is just not. It is in everything. If you're shopping in the middle aisles of a supermarket, you are malnourished. It's that simple. And all I can say to people is, whatever you hear that may kind of challenge your belief structures, just keep an open mind and understand and do your research and talk to people that have been eating an appropriate way, like, a species appropriate way, and ask them.
Yeah.
Do your research, but do it properly, as in, if you feel that this is aligning with you and you're seeing it over and over and over, that's a reason why.
Yeah. So let's wind it up now. Let's end it now. But I before we go, because there's probably, with all the processed foods and all the stress of what's going on in the world, there's probably a lot of people who are developing psychological problems, whether it's anxiety, or maybe the psychological problem they had is getting worse or something like that. Yeah. But for people who aren't in Melbourne, and I'm not sure if you do online calls, maybe you do.
I do. I have clients all over the world.
Okay, fantastic. Just in this video, do you have any words of them, like motivation or any hope you can give them about their psychological condition getting better? Just like some, love you can share with them or something like that?
Yeah, I guess the main two things is, really, has anyone ever showed you how your mind works and why it does what it does?
Yeah.
And secondly, has anyone ever asked you what you eat? So think about those two questions. And if the answer is no, definitely I'm open. I do 30-minute free calls just to check in, have a chat with me, because we've got to look at those root causes. And when, if people keep treating the symptoms, you're just going to stay stuck in that loop. But again, what we talk about through eating a species appropriate way, it is very, very challenging to belief structures. But again, those belief structures may not be serving you. So we're here to support you in understanding, well, where does that belief come from? Whose is it? Where did you get it from? And really actually understand, is it serving you or not? And just go from there. Beliefs are pretty held very strong, but sometimes they're not good. They're not good ones.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much,
Thanks,
Dr.
Liam.
West.
Amazing.
Where can people find your work? I know you have social media and things like that.
Yeah. So Instagram, Facebook, Natalie E. West, and then website natalieewest.com. Yeah. Or just obviously, you know, I'm always on your page liking stuff. So stalk me there.
Yeah. She follows me, so you can find her there. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Liam.
Okay. See ya. Bye.
Bye.